So I'm just going to say a bit about Sangha. So I think the first thing I'd like to say is that where we are now, I think it's really important that we let go of this sort of fantasy of going back to normal. I mean, I think this is one of the great benefits of the pandemic, actually, is that this teaching that of impermanence, really. The old world is gone. And the new world that we're stepping towards, that we're stepping into, is completely unknown. We have no idea what's going to come next. So everything is really different. I hope you kind of taste that. I hope you feel that. This real potential of newness, of freshness. And actually the Dharma tells us this is how it always is. And somehow the pandemic has really kind of heightened, I think, this sense of the ephemeral nature of the kind of the norms that we kind of live our lives by. That they're actually in transition the whole time. And I think it's to really get hold of that, to really make use of this opportunity of this such a strong teaching that we've been given over the last year or so, is a real opportunity to start to direct our lives on the basis of that reality, this basis that we can't keep recreating a world that in fact has never existed, and we have to keep stepping towards the unknown. This is really how life is for all of us. So we have a real opportunity here with Sangha, with this quality of Sangha, to really look at our own experience. So I'm just going to share a few words with you. So Tim, if you could put onto the screen share now, that would be really helpful. And of course, what we should really have now is a sort of a big drop down kind of screen to kind of project. But instead, we've got a bit of paper with my scribbled handwriting on. It's good to be retro occasionally, isn't it? But of course, you probably can't see it particularly. Taranita, you look like a notice board. So once you just stand there beautifully, and I'll stand with the other one. So Taranita and myself are the two options that we have at any moment in our experience. Can you see this? You have got it actually there on the screen share, so that's fine. So what we always have. I'm probably going to get my notes off the floor, and I'm not going to be able to see what's on the paper.
Oh, blimey.
So what we have, I'll do my one first. So as we enter a new world, we continually enter a new world. But actually, there's always two choices. We can either move towards this undiscriminating, we're just kind of riding with experience. Sorry? Oh, thanks.
Then you can look at it, can't you?
13, this is fantastic, isn't it? Yes. So, what we have now then, so we have these two options in our engagement with our life. We can either just allow ourselves just to sort of flow along in an unthinking, undiscriminating way, We can just react to situations as they arise. And we can just not really have any sense of real purpose to our lives. There's no kind of controlling or defining values or ideals that we're putting ourselves in relationship to. So what that tends to lead to is that a lot of the time we can be quite distracted. I'm imagining this is hopefully familiar to you as a kind of experience, that this kind of quality of mind is probably familiar to us all. And one of the things, or one of the causes of it, is what's described as mental proliferation. So what this is that we have a thought arises. I'm really going to do this tomorrow. Oh, but also tomorrow I'm going to, I've really got to book that holiday. And when I was on that holiday 3 years ago, I met that person, and that person took me to this place. And there we spin off into these kind of thought chains, which actually carry us away from our direct actual experience. So this proliferation of thought processes, mental events, as they're sometimes described, tends to blow us about. So we have what's described as the worldly winds. So we're blown from one corner to the next by this mental activity, which we seem to have no control over. It's purely running on habit, on this reactivity. And so we're blown about by these worldly winds. And there's traditionally 8 of them. So, of course, we want lots of pleasure and no pain. So when pleasure seems to be in the environment, we'll head for that. And when pain is present, we'll head out, avoid it. Another pair, is that we might be seeking fame. It's great to be reflected back as being of value. But unfortunately, the other side of that is infamy or disrepute. So we can be driven by these forces, find it very difficult to balance, to find a place of poise, because we're being pushed around by these different forces, these different winds. Gain and loss, of course, and the final ones are praise and blame. Are these kind of familiar experiences to you? They're kind of the things that most of us are sort of driven by to some extent. And I thought I'd add in, probably because we will have some of this, the other pairs of overwhelm or hyperactivity. So I don't know about you, but I think when there's quite difficult situations, such as a pandemic, or such as the climate catastrophe that is upon us, we can either feel completely overwhelmed by it and just collapse down and go unconscious, or we can move into really hyperactivity. We've just got to do something right now, and we're sort of driven into activity. And probably alongside that, there is this sense of despair or even outrage. So there's a sort of a numbing down or a kind of high energy response. So these are the kind of worldly winds that we can be driven by. And I think for many of us, this kind of the worldly winds, these kind of aspects of our life, we really need to find an anchor and a means to create enough resilience to not be blown about by these winds. Hence, we have the option of the Sangha dual, and Dharma practice. So the great thing about Dharma practice is that we can actually start to apply our attention to create these conscious choices in our life. So we start to apply a choice to our activity. And hopefully this is a kind of a creative process. And once we start engaging creatively with our life, with our actions, we create a sense of purpose. We know what we're doing and we know why we're doing it. And we have something called wise attention. So this is really quite a big area, but I wanted to mention it as I think it's an important aspect of practice, which is that where we place our energy actually creates our life. So where we put our attention will tend to strengthen those aspects of our experience. So for instance, if we watch, we listen to Radio 4 every morning while we're having our breakfast, that will tend to create a particular flavour to our experience. If we go to, I'm going to start describing my life, I want to stop. So let's I think so wise attention. So what I'm saying through that is just one of the things that we do through practice is start to recognize the choices that we're making, and as far as possible, bring them in relationship to the Dharma. And underneath this, I put this is engaged mindfulness. So this brings us to the Sangha jewel. The Sangha jewel is really the heart of this choice. It really strengthens this aspect of the Dharma life. The Sangha jewel really brings energy to this side of the these two forces that we probably all know, familiar with. And I think for me the most important aspect of this, the Sangha jewel, and it's very nice that Dharmic is holding it, is friendship. So friendship really is key to the Sangha jewel, that simple human connection, which is so vital for our well-being. I think it can be undervalued, but I think particularly because of the pandemic, hopefully as we start to kind of really come back into connection with each other, can really kind of savour and revel in the kind of the value, the potency of friendship. So I think this is one of the jewels, one of the aspects of the Sangha jewel, which is so central to encouraging us, supporting us to stay on this side of the balance, as it were. And during this year, we've been looking at the 5 spiritual faculties, and we had these very familiar phrases of meditation and energy and faith and wisdom, these sort of balancing forces in terms of spiritual faculties, all centered on mindfulness. I'm not going to say very much about that. There is a very nice little image on the website you can have a look at if you haven't, you're unfamiliar with the 5 spiritual faculties. But I think the last thing just to say about the Sangha jewel is that I think the Sangha jewel, one of the things about it is it's a really embodied practice. It's not just an idea, it's not just a concept, it's actually meeting face to face. And this is why I think it's such a relief to come back or have this sort of invitation to come back into the centre. I think this is really why we need the Sangha jewel in the centre. Embodied practice is so key. And just active engagement with each other. You know, I don't, some of you have only met a few times, but you know, just those simple meetings, they have an effect. They build up into kind of body memories, which are so important to put us at ease and allow us to trust each other, and we start to open our lives to each other, which is the nature of Sangha. And through putting down our aloneness, putting down our isolation, one of the things that is created is a sense of resilience, of strength, that we can gain support from each other. We're not alone in this world. In fact, we are completely interwoven. So I'm aware there's a bit more on the screen. Thanks. That's great. Thanks. So I just want to say one last thing before we move on. So one of the last things I want to say about Sangha is that well, the Sangha is made up of all of us. The Sangha is not the heart cooler. It's not the order members involved or not involved. The Sangha is actually the whole community of those people coming into the Bristol Buddhist Centre or feeling some affinity with the Bristol Buddhist Centre. So I really encourage you, if there's in coming to the centre or engaging with the Sangha, if you feel that there is something that is obscuring, making it difficult for you to engage with the Sangha, I'd really encourage you, invite you, ask you to come and talk to us directly. It's so important, this, because it's so easy to just say, oh, they're just a bunch of whatever, and just walk away. And what you're walking away from is actually the Dharma, or the Dharma in this particular form. You're missing this opportunity for engaging and checking out your own views, checking out your ideas, but you also might be bringing a really important part of the jigsaw that is required to really take the Sangha on to the next stage of its development. So if you've got something to say, some inspiration or some difficulties, please come and talk to us. This is the nature of Sangha. It's a dialogue. So yes, thank you, and really hope to see more of you in the near future. Well, that's all I want to say tonight. So those of you online, we're now going to have a break of